so fast, and you want someone who is knowledgeable, and that's not because everything is going to go well, because we're hopeful that everything will go well. But if something doesn't go well, you want to be sure that whoever created that contract didn't leave something out that would make it so that you end up losing a child. I did hear a story about a couple that had adopted a child, and because the lawyer wasn't a full-time fertility lawyer, they left something out of the contract, and the couple ended up losing the child. Another thing I wanted to add about adoption, everybody wants a baby, but you can actually say that you only want a child who is available for adoption. I've had, and I know of one couple in particular, but I know that I've worked with actually two more prior to this one couple that welcomed a child. They worked with the birth parent, welcomed a child, and then the birth parent changed their mind. And then they ended up, after they had fallen in love with this child and created a space in their home and their heart for this child, the child ended up going back to the birth family. This is not to denigrate birth mothers or birth families, but it is to say, to protect yourself. You can say, we only want to see those children whose parental rights have been relinquished or terminated, so that that child is actually available for adoption when we're introduced to the child. Okay. With that, Dr. Rebecca Chason with Shady Grove Fertility.
Thank you. Last, I hope I will keep everybody awake. So, as you guys all know, I work for Shady Grove Fertility. So we are a group of physicians, if people don't know, who have all done training in obstetrics and gynecology and then gone on to do a fellowship in reproductive endocrinology and infertility. And just, I think, like law and medicine, it's really a very small, specialized area. And so Shady Grove Fertility is set up not only by our experience, but also the practice as a whole to really deal with this particular area of medicine. And it's a wonderful place to work. So we deal both with infertility and other reproductive issues, patients who have recurrent pregnancy losses or other reproductive-related conditions that might affect the health of a pregnancy or getting pregnant. So generally, patients are referred to us by their physicians about half of the time, and I'd say the other half come through referral of friends or their search of the internet, self-referral. Most people, depending on your insurance, don't even need a referral from your physician. And when you come to see us, really the initial thing is just evaluation. When you come to see me, the first thing we do is take a full history medically for both partners, and then talk about a basic assessment of your health and your fertility status. And I would say there's really two goals there. One goal is certainly to figure out why as a couple that you haven't gotten pregnant, and then be able to discuss appropriate treatment options. But the second goal is to make sure that women are healthy enough to go through fertility treatments and then to carry a pregnancy. And I think sometimes we forget that that's part of it, but the goal is not just to get pregnant, but to take home a healthy baby and to have a healthy mom and to have a healthy family. And so all that is incorporated in the initial evaluation. Kind of the big picture overview is that when a couple comes in, we take a history from both of you, and then there's a basic evaluation to kind of look at both reproductive systems. It makes sense to evaluate both partners at the same time because oftentimes we find at least minor things with both partners in the couple, but regardless, we want to make sure we're treating the whole picture at once. So for ladies, that list is longer. Because we've got more to evaluate. So we're evaluating your ovaries, including kind of number of eggs and the ovarian, just making sure that anatomy is normal. That is done through ultrasounds and through blood work to help figure out your fertility potential. We look at fallopian tubes as those need to be open to conceive certainly naturally. So we do that with a hysterosalpingogram. And when people come to see me, we got this long list of acronyms, basically, because everything has long names, and we give it all 3 letters. But that's an HSG for people who have heard of that. And that's a dye study to look and see if the fallopian tubes are open. And then we do some imaging to look at the uterus. Some people, when they come to us, already know they have a history of uterine fibroids. They're probably the most common uterine pathology. Maybe some have had surgery before to remove fibroids. And so that's something we see frequently, and we will look at more closely to determine if that's preventing people from getting pregnant or from having a healthy pregnancy. And in that stage, I always work very closely with your referring physician or your OBGYN. So sometimes that means going back and forth to have additional surgery. I often call people's physicians just to talk about what's been done in the past, just so we can assess the overall health and plan for pregnancy. And then the list is shorter. We get a semen analysis. We're looking to see the number of sperm, if they're moving appropriately, if they're the right shape. And then we sit down and we talk about all of that. And I think one thing, even Darlene from our office who's here tonight and I were talking about, regardless of your plan, and I think it's so lovely, I love that we're seeing the full breadth of options for family building. It's just really helpful sometimes to have information about your own health and your own fertility. And so really after all those tests are done, the next step is to just sit down and talk about what it shows and what the options are. And then from there, I always talk to my patients about, we're really incorporating the medicine and then your values as a family and the things that you are interested in undergoing or the things that you feel fit your faith or the experience that you want to have, and then the financial circle is certainly a part of this as well. And at that point, we talk about options. I think general options start with low intervention medications to help women ovulate or to ovulate more than one egg if you're already ovulating one. Sometimes that can be done just with timed intercourse, and we can help with timing. And then from there, we go to what we call IUI or intrauterine insemination, where we're taking washed sperm that helps concentrate the normal moving sperm and placing that inside the uterus right at the time of ovulation. And that's done in the office. It's not too uncomfortable, and usually that's done in conjunction with the medication. So I always tell people we're trying to get everybody closer together, getting the good sperm closer to multiple eggs and increasing the chance of pregnancy. And then kind of moving up in terms of technology, the next major step is IVF, which I think is what most people think about when they think of infertility practices. But a large proportion of our patients get pregnant with timed intercourse or IUI. For those who go on to IVF or in vitro fertilization, that's really a way of bypassing fallopian tubes, as well as being able to fertilize eggs with low sperm numbers or low sperm motility. So women go through pretty significant stimulation of the ovaries. Instead of producing 1, 2, or 3 eggs, we're trying to produce almost as many as we can that are currently available. We retrieve those surgically with an outpatient procedure, and then we combine them with our partner's sperm. And that is done in a couple of different ways. But at that point, then we have some of those will make embryos, and we'll watch those embryos continue to grow and usually transfer 1, maybe 2 embryos back and freeze any additional embryos. And in the future, those additional embryos can be used for second or third tries or for additional siblings. We are able to really give you a pretty accurate prognosis based off of all of your testing if you were to come through IVF. And so part of sitting down and talking about the plan is talking about what is the expected pregnancy rate for me in my situation with IUI, or for me in my situation with IVF. And so we're able to give pretty accurate information. Although I do know at the end of the day, for any one person, it's 100% or it's 0%. So we talk a lot about statistics and then just go step by step through the process. Beyond that, adding in terms of sort of technology and things we have available is thinking about donor sperm for couples who either have really severe male factor infertility or no sperm, potentially what we call azoospermia. And then donor egg for women who have really poor ovarian reserve or very few eggs or quality left. And then some couples opt in those situations to do donor embryo, which is, I would say, sort of you're adopting essentially an embryo that another couple has created that they were not able to use, usually because they don't feel like they can build their family any further, but they are not comfortable discarding their embryo. So that's a great opportunity, and the experience of being pregnant and being able to deliver is something that is important to some couples. So that's another opportunity for family building. And then, as Peter mentioned, some couples need to use a gestational carrier. So this happens when generally it's a uterine factor. Somebody who's had to have their uterus removed would be kind of the most extreme, or maybe a history of significant fibroids and multiple surgeries and unsuccessful pregnancies, things like that. So a gestational carrier is when generally the couple's egg and sperm are utilized to create embryos, but that embryo is then placed into somebody else's uterus. That is the most complicated thing we do legally, and certainly that's, we have very specific guidelines for going through that, but that we work very closely with agencies that help essentially place gestational carriers with families who need a carrier to work together. And that can be a very rewarding experience for both parties. And I know a colleague of mine who is a reproductive endocrinologist who she herself has had to use a gestational carrier, and she just had her second baby that way. And they have such a beautiful relationship with the woman who carried both of her children. And it's very sweet. And so it's been a really difficult journey, but I think that's such a good example of how our journey is not always as we picture it to be. But that there are beautiful moments we kind of never could have imagined that kind of grow out of the difficulty. So we have a really wide range, and I guess I would say from a cost perspective, that's the same as well. So a very wide range. The most important thing is that diagnostics are almost always covered by your insurance. And if you're not sure when you call to make your appointment, our team can confirm for you and make sure that you have benefits. And so the first step is just coming in and having a conversation, talking about testing, and then choosing to do testing and getting the information. Beyond that, certainly nobody's obligated to do any of the treatments, and the cost of treatment varies widely from whether or not you have insurance coverage to those couples who have no insurance coverage at all. I think one question we often get is for those who have no insurance coverage, what their ranges are. I jotted myself some notes because there's quite a few. For IUI, the out-of-pocket, the cost with no insurance coverage and no discounts or anything is about $2,000. A lot of people on the radio hear about our shared risk program, which is a kind of unique program in which the upfront cost is a little bit higher, but it covers up to 6 cycles of IVF. And at any point, that money is refundable if either you determine this is not the way you want to build your family, or we determine that it's medically not likely that you will get pregnant in that way. And so those costs range from about $19,000 to $26,000. And those are for patients who have no insurance. But I think the important thing is it's so hard for me to make that specific to any of you in this room. The most important thing is to start with an evaluation and then to find out what your insurance coverage is and go from there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chason. Now, for some of you, I saw the eyes start to glaze over when she said $19,000 to $26,000 because, and I, my eyes certainly would have been glazing. I'm sure they did glaze, but I want you to understand that you spend money on things in the regular world. Your car note, your mortgage. Many of you women have beautiful rings on your finger. Somebody put a ring on it, didn't he? You hold it up, okay. That costed money. It didn't come from a Cracker Jack box. So we got to think about family building and the value that we place on that in the same way that we think about these other things that are important to us. Of course, it would be great if building a family was free. And for many people, all they need to do is try or be 16. But it doesn't happen like that for everyone. And so, don't flinch just because these things are going to cost money. There are financial resources available. I shared a little bit about the Cade Foundation Family Building Grant, which is available online. Applications are available online, www.cadefoundation.org. But if you go on our website and you click on the resource page, there are about 50 other grants that you'll learn about as well. So there are grants available. Many clinics have sliding scales based on your income. So as Dr. Chason mentioned, after you have set your appointment with the physician, you need to set an appointment with the financial counselor, and that person can help you go through the resources. Dr. Chason, did you have something?
Well, yeah, I just was going to mention that. Certainly Shady Grove has multiple programs, including discounts based on income, military discounts, which is near and dear to my heart, and just lots of options. And then for many of you, actually a lot of people in Maryland have great coverage through their insurance as well. So I certainly didn't mean to scare anyone, but that is a common question that I get. But there is really a huge range, and I think it really varies from family to family.
That's excellent. I'm sorry.
I had a question. Well, not a question, but I just wanted to know if the panel can elaborate more on the age issue, because during my infertility journey, a elaborate more on that so that people are more aware of this?
I have 2 patients right now, 46, who are pregnant. One naturally, one had IVF. So it depends. I mean,
I can speak for those patients who are going through treatment. For the weight aspect, that is really kind of going back to what I said at the beginning, ensuring a healthy fertility journey and pregnancy. So we do have BMI cutoffs that are based on safety for anesthesia for the egg retrieval, and then safety in pregnancy based on great studies that show with higher BMIs, there's increased risk of miscarriage, early delivery, and severe complications of pregnancy. And so we do have BMI cutoffs, so that's great that you mentioned that. And I wanted to encourage, that's a great thing for our long-term health that all of us should be thinking about. But I always, we talk about what that cutoff is and help couples get to that if they aren't meeting the threshold. For age,
What is it?
our BMI, well, it's different for IUI versus IVF. So the BMI cutoff for IVF is 40, and that's based on anesthesia risks regarding the egg retrieval in our surgical center. And the BMI cutoff for IUI is 42, less than 43, I believe. And that is kind of what we're talking about in terms of risk to pregnancy and outcomes. We have a great wellness center that works as a Fit to Be Fertile seminar and series that they do to connect people who are going through the same journey, who are trying to lose weight, to kind of focus on that. And I often refer my patients to nutritionists in the area to help with that as well. The age factor, so for Shady Grove in general, most of our egg retrievals need to happen less than the age of 45. For those who are using a donor egg or a donor embryo, less than the age of 50. And those are based, the age of 50 is really based on kind of long-term thoughts of safety both for pregnancy and for long-term child rearing. The age of 45 is based on just chance of pregnancy from your own egg. So for us ladies, we're born with a set number of eggs, and we go through our life using those. And unfortunately, when we get around the age of 35, as the egg number declines, pregnancy rates start to decline slowly, and then after the age of 40, fairly rapidly. So pregnancy rates are associated with age, and so again, that's something that is specific patient to patient based off of their evaluation, but age of the female plays a huge role. Men don't have quite as abrupt of a cutoff in their fertility.
So I'm going to move the program along. We'll take more questions at the end because we do have some additional speakers. I want to introduce Mrs. Karen Streeter from Kids Peace, who was a foster child and is adopting a child out of foster care, and the child is a member of First Baptist Church of Glenard. Did I get that right?
Almost.
Okay, I'm kind of messed up.
But you said Mrs. and being married. I'm not.
Miss.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Yes, so she shared part of what I wanted to share. I always share something different because there's so much to share, and I just ask that God give me the words that you need to hear each time I get in front of a group of people. I was a foster child. Before becoming a foster child, we had a very, very difficult life. And my mother was arrested for neglect, abandonment, and abuse. And in that process, again, I didn't know that the Lord was orchestrating my life, by the things that I was going through. And they were very traumatic things. And so fast forward, I always knew I was going to be a teacher. I wanted to work with kids all my life, and I wanted to work with kids as a teacher because I wanted to make an impact, because I never understood why my teachers didn't know what was happening at home. I didn't understand as a kid. And so growing up, I wanted to be a teacher so that I could personally get to know my students and make sure I was helping them in every way that I could. And then through prayer, the Lord had said to me, Pastor Jenkins said to me, in a sermon, all of us have an assignment, and we need to seek what that assignment is. And so in praying, I learned that my assignment was to become a foster parent and an advocate for youth. So I proceeded to do that unofficially for many years, but officially through a therapeutic treatment foster care agency named Kids Peace. They're in Columbia, the Maryland office is. And I started fostering these mostly teenagers, is what you get in therapeutic foster care, and making these small differences in their lives just by loving them and parenting them and taking care of them. My first foster son, his name is Kevin, and he was 18. I got him over there on the streets of Palmer Park selling cocaine. Literally, I drove up to him and I said, "Get in my daggone car, sir." And he did. He thought I was crazy, I think. And he ended up moving into my foster home through some logistics, and he's now 23 years old. I got him when he was 18, and he has just re-enlisted 6 more years in the United States Navy. So we can make some very positive changes in the lives of children that are in foster care. As already spoken, we have nearly 500,000 children in the foster care system in our very own country. And over 100,000 of them are eligible for adoption. I have 2 girls now. I don't know how I ended up with girls. Lord, please send me the boys back. But I have 2 girls in my home right now. And I have their permission to share this because this is their story. But my 20-year-old, when she moved in with me when she was 16, she was mute. She would only growl at me. That's all she would do. But now, through love and parenting and safety, right, they need safety. She is a junior in college, getting ready to transfer to Bowie State. She works in customer service, talking to people, and she just purchased her first car. And so she'll age out of the system in June at the age of 21, but ready to be an independent young adult, right? And my youngest girl that I have, she's 11, and she's been in foster care since she was 8. She was part of a human trafficking ring right around the corner from us, right in Waldorf. And grown men had done some pretty terrible things to her. And when I got her, I actually got her out of a residential treatment center because she was there for homicidal and suicidal ideations at the age of 9. But they treated her, and she came. It was time for her to come home, to a home, right? So treatment foster care is the next level past that. And I received her in December of 2016. She's a young girl with cerebral palsy, and we had surgery that Christmas. Who schedules surgery for a 10-year-old on Christmas week? I don't know. But we got through it, and then for the next 6 months, she went through the worst temper tantrums that lasted 6 to 8 hours long, 4 and 5 days a week. It was the most exhausting experience of my life, I think. But on Mother's Day last year, so 6 months in to having her, she walked to the altar at this church and received Jesus, and she never had a temper tantrum after that. I will be adopting her next Friday through foster care. So I will get to keep her. So those are all feel-good stories, and it's great to be able to adopt through foster care, and it's great to be able to foster, but so I always tell parents when I speak to foster parents, being a parent is one thing, being a step parent is another thing, but being a foster parent is a whole other thing, because it comes with so many, you are not their mom and you are not their dad. You are the other people until they learn to trust you, and you have to work that much harder to build a bridge. And it's a lot of emotional work. But if it's in your heart and the Lord leads you to become a foster parent, it's certainly, certainly needed. And if adoption is something that happens, then great. I never planned on adopting. That was never my plan, to foster to adopt, right? I think that's a silly term. But it wasn't my plan to adopt, but I always say that God will have the children come in my home that is meant to come in my home. I've had 11 children total. Some of them didn't leave with such a great ending in my house, but I know that I was just the person to plant the seed, and someone else had to water that plant. And so that's happening in their lives. So they were only meant to be with me for a short period. But I guess what I want to say is, lucky for you that there's this whole plethora of people here that are able to give you all of your options so that you can pray and decide which option is the best option for you to build your family. That's it.
Thank you so much. So at this point, we're going to move on to some people from First Baptist Church of Glenard who can share their testimony about overcoming in different ways.
Well, Karen was one of them. That's why she was playing dual roles. When I got up, I shared a little bit of my testimony. Skip and I, when we first got married, we, honeymoon blitz, we were going to start a family, and it just didn't happen that way. We felt like we did everything we knew to do correctly, but that wasn't God's plan for us to immediately get pregnant. And so, let me take that back. We got pregnant, and I had a miscarriage after after conceiving the first time. And that was 6 months after we got married. About 8 months later, I had another miscarriage. And then I went to the doctor, and he's like, Beverly, I don't know what to tell, I don't know what to tell you except to pursue fertility treatment or adoption. And so I went to Shady Grove, and I started fertility treatments, and it didn't work for me. We went through a cycle, and we were very challenged in that cycle, but it just didn't work out for us. And so then we decided to pursue adoption. We went through a private agency, and then I worked with Peter because we used a private agency in Florida. And I wanted to be comfortable that someone knew the law in Maryland. And so that was something I wanted to do. Camille said earlier, you want to make sure that you get legal counsel involved, the way that makes you comfortable and you feel like you're doing the right thing. So I engaged Peter, and Peter helped us work through the law here in Maryland. I worked with Bethany Christian Services, who's outside, to do my home study. Things happened very quickly for us because a friend of mine knew a director of an agency who was looking for African American Christian families, and we met with them, met with the birth mom, and the adoption literally happened for us in a record time. It was the end of June, and by the time the middle of August came, he was home with us. So we did an expedited home study, and we know that that doesn't happen normally in terms of an adoption time frame, but it was the hand of God. And so, so we had our son, and Peter helped us work through any issues in the state of Maryland. And then 4 months later, I got pregnant. So I really thought that had a lot to do with going to Shady Grove. I said, they must have cleaned me out or something. So 4 months later, I got pregnant. So now I'm pregnant. I have an infant, and they both were born in July. Timothy, who is now 11 years old, he was born in July 14th. Trinity happened to be born on my mother's birthday, who's deceased. She was born on July 22nd, so they are 12 months and a week and a day, 8 days difference in their age. So it's amazing. I can't tell you that when I was going through that process, it was just heartbreaking because I really felt like, God, I really want to be a mom. I believe you called me to be married in the season and to build a family, and it just wasn't happening. But the fact of the matter is, I wouldn't trade that journey for nothing, just to be able to share with you all. And so my kids are 10 and 11 now, Timothy and Trinity. And sometimes people wonder, is there a different feeling between an adopted child and having a child naturally? And I can tell you there's absolutely no difference in the love. Actually, I don't know, my son has my heart a little more than my daughter does sometimes. I think that might be a mother-son thing. But they are just amazing kids, and it wasn't a matter, again, it wasn't a matter of if, it was simply a matter of when. And I just want to share that with you all because God does have a plan for your life. He certainly had a plan for us. At the time, our story certainly wasn't over. It was a page in the book. And the story continues. So we're excited to be able to share that with you. I want to also ask Wanda, where'd Wanda go? Did she sneak out? Oh, I also want to ask Wanda to come up and share her story. Some of you may have heard her story before, but I want her to come up to share her part of the story because different things work for different people. So Wanda's story is a little different.
It's a little different. Hi everyone, I'm Wanda Thomas, and I've been with Abraham's Promise before when it was Sisters of Hannah since 2006, which is when I was diagnosed with fibroids and adenomyosis. And so my doctor was like, oh, you need to go to a fertility doctor, hurry up and get pregnant. So I said, okay, go to Shady Grove, Club Shady as we like to call it. And Dr. Weidra says, I'm really sorry, your only option is a gestational carrier. So I'm like, I can't receive that right now. So I went back to my doctor. He performed the surgery because my uterus was like, I was, I don't know, 5 months pregnant, I think 4 months, 5 months pregnant. And so he cut out 2 large portions of it, stitched it back together, put some gauzy thing, you doctors know what it is, around it to prevent the scarring. And I went back to Shady Grove again. And I was like, well, what about now? And he was amazed. And he said, I'm going to have to say, okay, we can go ahead and do the process. And at the time, I was 37. We had been married 2 years? I think we were married 2 years at that point. 3 years. I'm old. Something like that. And so, first cycle, I had like 18 eggs. We ended up with 12 viable embryos. We were able to freeze 8, and I got pregnant. And so I'm like, oh, IVF is the thing, it works. And 17 weeks in, my water broke. And I didn't know, you learn about your body once you go through infertility, like follicles and all that stuff. I didn't know about them until, you go through it. And I'm thinking, okay, my water broke. I'll get some more fluid, it'll generate back. And they were like, no, it's not. I hate crying when I get through this. They were like, no, it's not. And so we lost our son Peyton at 17 weeks into the pregnancy. And my faith was in the medicine. Thank you. My faith was in the medicine, unfortunately. And so I'm like, IVF worked before, it'll work again. And I don't want to say I removed God from it, but God wasn't at the top of the list. Shady Grove and Dr. Weidra were at the top of my list. And so we did a frozen cycle, nothing. We did another frozen cycle, nothing. Now in between all this, I'm taking royal jelly and still thinking maybe I'll get pregnant on my own. So around ovulation time, it's like twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, over a 7-day period, whether or not you feel like you just got hurt and get it done because they said this is how you get pregnant. And it was stressful, it was difficult. I kept switching insurances at my company because luckily they offer like 3 or 4. So I had Aetna, used up all those fertility benefits, and I switched to Cigna, used up all those. And then when I got to my credit card, Dr. Weidra was like, wait. And so Dr. Weidra negotiated my price and reduced it. So don't be afraid to ask your doctors, adoption agencies, or anywhere else to lower the price. And that one failed as well. So then we started looking into adoption, and we met with Peter because I had some friends who were successful with the independent private adoption. And each of them have 2 kids now. And I said, okay, well, maybe this is it. And then my husband stops and he goes, God told me this isn't the way we're supposed to have our child. So now I'm broken because I'm geared up for adoption. So then we went on to the 5th cycle, and I did acupuncture. I did everything. We figured out we spent probably about $70,000 over almost a 10-year period of trying to get pregnant. And I said, I'm done. I wanted to quit everything. I wanted to quit my ministry. I wanted to quit my friends. Some of them I did over time. And then my mentor, she said, well, if you broke your foot, wouldn't you get a cast? I said, yeah. And she's like, okay, so God gave you IVF. Use the tools he gave you. And so we ended up going back again for the 6th time, and our son was born 1 month before I turned 44. 1 month before I turned 44, and he is our little miracle baby. He's really special, and I just say don't give up. Now, during the process, I had mentors in Abraham's Promise, and then I had unidentified mentors in Camille. Because she was always so encouraging every time I would speak to her. We planned these seminars, and she always had an encouraging word. She'd ask me where I was in the process, and I even had other friends who would always be with me during the journey. So I encourage you all to, have someone partner with you, have someone walk through it with you, because it's not easy. And your friends who get pregnant, when their husband looks at them, they're not always your best advocate because they don't understand the pain that he goes through. I'm also very thankful for my husband because my big kids, I call them my wedding presents, they are 34 and 27 now, and my grandkids are 11 and 14. So he started all over again for me, and he's currently 55 with a 3-year-old, and they're home together tonight. And so I'm just very thankful, and I wanted to also go back to something Camille said about the cost of it. We do have the money in places, but the thing is you plan for the marriage, so you save. You plan for the honeymoon, so you save. You plan for the house, so you save. And by the time you get married, get the rings, get the house, finish the honeymoon, you move in, now you think you're just gonna get pregnant, but that money isn't there, and you don't always have time to try to save and plan for it, which is very difficult because you've got the doctors telling you, your clock, you gotta hurry up, retrieve the eggs before you're a certain age. And so if you waited, to my age to start the process, sometimes it gets a little overwhelming with what you're going through and how to address it. So I just encourage everyone, don't wait to say, let me figure out what I want to do. Start talking through it with your partners now. Figure out what you want to do because, like she mentioned, the HSG can only be done at a certain time of the month. If you miss that date because you're not available for whatever reason, now it pushes it back again and you go through scheduling. So before you know it, you can be 6 months out just to get one test, and time moves quickly. So I hope my testimony helps someone. I'm glad you all are here.